Hello and welcome to the Art of Aging, a part of the United Church Homes podcast series from the Center for Abundant Aging. I so enjoy this part of my job, having conversations with others as we look at what it means to age in the 21st century and having positive, empowering conversations that challenge and encourage and inspire all to age with abundance. Today, I have the joy of welcoming Dr. Shannon Jarrott. Dr. Jarrott is a professor at the Ohio State University College of Social Work and director of faculty development. An expert in intergenerational programming and aging, her work focuses on how intentional connections between younger and older people improve well-being across the lifespan. With a PhD in human development and family studies and a gerontology minor from Penn State, Dr. Jarrott has spent over 2 decades researching and leading innovative programs that bring generations together in meaningful ways. She previously directed intergenerational programs and research initiatives at Virginia Tech and is widely recognized for advancing evidence-based strategies that combat ageism and strengthen communities. Welcome, Shannon.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here, Beth, for Abundant Aging.
Great. And so, Sharon, why don't you start by telling us how you first became interested in aging and intergenerational work?
I'm glad to do that. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. I've actually been writing about intergenerational relationships and their potential to address opportunity and community need since I was in high school and applying to colleges. My parents had my brother when I was 16 years old, and our grandmother was 81. She had been a primary caregiver during the day when my sister and I were very young, and our dad was going overseas in the Navy. And then she became my brother's primary caregiver during the day while us girls were in high school. And my father was still in the Navy and my mom was working full time. She told us he gave her a reason to get up in the morning. And we knew that he couldn't have gotten better care hanging out with her and going to senior center lunches and making the rounds of the neighborhood businesses. And so ever since having that awareness that the benefit that they gained from each other was probably similar to what she and I and my sister gained from each other when we were little girls, really led me to want to help other young and older people who don't have those kinds of family ties to enjoy those benefits. And so that's why most of my work centers on unrelated young and older people getting together to support each other's health and development.
But how many of us have had the privilege of those initial intergenerational relationships being with those that we are related to? And I'm reminded of my sister-in-law long before I was married to my spouse and a part of that family, but she was born shortly after their grandfather died. And she similarly became a significant reason for, they called her Mommy Joe, their grandmother, to get out of bed in the morning and to help care for the youngest member of the family. Yeah.
Yeah. And, sometimes we need these relationships because we have perhaps not had positive intergenerational ties when we were younger. And that can make us fearful or concerned about what it's going to be like when our parents become old or when we become old. And there's some really fascinating research out there about how our ideas about getting older, our expectations about getting older, actually impact our health and our longevity once that we belong to our members in that age group.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think we have that chance too, whether you have had zero family intergenerational ties, only positive or only negative. Want to expose people to the range of aging and the range of being a young person and to think about what that means for ourselves and our own future lives.
And it's one thing to have maybe had those experiences or see other people have those experiences. And then it's another thing to make the intentional decision to make this a focus of your research. Not everybody does that. And can you talk about that transition for you, and how do you go about researching the value of relationships like that?
Sure. The graduate school training that I had was focused on family caregivers of relatives who have Alzheimer's disease. That applies to a lot of people. I'm sure you've talked about it in Abundant Aging, both the growth opportunities and the blessings and the challenges of being a caregiver. And I got introduced to a community-based service for family caregivers of older adults, adult day services. And that introduced me to some programs that had childcare programs on site. And then when I landed that job at Virginia Tech, it was like a dream to have a child development center right next to an adult day services. I was comfortable that I understood what adults with dementia were capable of, even as they navigated physical deterioration and loss of memory and a lot of abilities that they used to exercise, and to know that these folks have still got things to teach the children and to benefit from being with the children, and the children have things that they can share and talents to give to the older adults as well. And so that really became my focus. I was responsible for directing research at Adult Day. And I've often said, I like the idea of adding to the menu. Not to say that intergenerational is the best or the only way to do something, but that it is an attractive approach for a lot of folks. Not everybody wants to be involved with young children who's older. And sometimes young people need to find that right intergenerational angle to join in. But there are a lot of things that we do siloed by age group when we could do them by bringing people together.
Exactly. And not all intergenerational has to be grandparent age and young children age.
Yes, this is the hot debate topic of what constitutes intergenerational, and I don't want to complicate it too much. For me, I typically just find comfort thinking about people who are not of adjacent generations.
Right.
So I typically think about babies through, say, 24-year-olds. That includes then your traditional college age student, and then adults 50 and older. Well, I'm in my 50s. I technically am not an older person, but I'm not in the same generation as my college students who are 18 to 23 years old. What's happening, what is adding to this debate is that as people are living longer, we see opportunities for programming that might include young children and middle-aged people, let's say 30 to 50 years old, and old people in their 70s or 80s or in their 60s. So there are a lot of ways to define an intergenerational relationship, but mostly we're not talking about adult children and their older parents, or parents and their, say, teenage or young children.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you had mentioned this a little while ago, and in talking about the connection between the positive connection, I believe, between intergenerational programming and addressing ageism.
Mm-hmm.
How does that show up?
It could show up a couple of different ways. Part of it is really mind over matter. There are some experiments in which older adults get exposed subliminally to more positive images, and then tests are done of their walking stability or of their signature in their handwriting, and they see that there's greater confidence and stability among those who were exposed to those positive subliminal messages compared to those who were exposed to negative unconscious imaging. So that's one of the ways. Practically speaking, when we internalize a negative stereotype about older adults, we can start to self-limit ourselves. We might not try to do what we're really capable of doing. Maybe something's hard one day and your shoulder is sore after you're doing a task that you've always done and easily. You might decide, oh, well, this is what happens when you're old. I guess I'm just going to have to stop doing this. When in reality, it might be the case that you need to start doing some exercises to maintain that activity without pain, or you need a brace, or you need a different tool. Let's say you're a gardener like me. You might need to get something that works a little bit better for you in this current physical state. Another really important thing that can happen when we internalize ageist ideas is that we might not ask as much of a doctor. We might accept a doctor saying to us, well, you're 65 years old. What do you expect to happen? When our doctor should be asking us, what matters to you? Let's figure out how we can get you back to doing what matters to you. And so if we buy into this ageism, internalize, we could be reducing our physical, our social, or our cognitive activity. We might not be utilizing resources that are available to us from people who should have the expertise to support our successful aging. And that can just lead to other negative consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. I know someone who was 45, and they began to have difficulty. Like they'd be talking, and they wouldn't be able to pull up words of everyday objects. And at 45, they said, "Well, this is just a part of aging." And they didn't mention this challenge that they were having, I think because of embarrassment. And it had been going on for 9 months to a year when suddenly they had a crisis and were rushed to the hospital, and within hours discovered they had a brain tumor. It had nothing to do with aging. Now, had they taken those symptoms differently earlier, would that have made a difference? Who knows? But that's kind of a worst case scenario of how our ageist beliefs can affect our health.
Yeah.
Way
Well,
before.
and you see it play out in caregiving and in classes that I teach. I'll usually stop. It would probably be about midway through the semester, and I will say, this is the most important lesson you will learn in this class. And it relates to your 45-year-old friend's example. Dementia is not a normative condition.
Yeah.
If you have got a family member who's exhibiting, 1, 2, 3, you need to get them to the doctor. Don't say, oh, well, this is part of old age. There's nothing we can do about it. Because there are a lot of causes for the different dementia illnesses, and some of them can be treated. Same thing if your friend had known that inability to name everyday items at 45 is not a normative age-related change, it might have tipped them off to seek help earlier.
It's not normative at 55 or 65 or 75 either. So, yeah.
I've thought there are courses, I have a window that looks out onto a sidewalk that is traversed by many incoming freshmen and their parents coming for orientation at Ohio State. And I think sometimes about what's part of that orientation. And they're talking to students about establishing good relationships, including intimate partnerships, about having good health when they move out of the house and into a dorm, dealing with alcohol and the possibility of getting involved in other things that were maybe harder to do in high school, living under mom and dad's roof. And I can't help but think that they talk about financial responsibility now too. Why can't we talk to these people about health for the long term, setting themselves up to be healthy, happy old people in the future?
We need to have orientation for aging.
Yeah. Sign me up.
And
it
needs to be a recurring thing that we do every 5 to 10 years because we're having different experiences. And there's new research that shows new and improved opportunities. Yeah.
And instead of bringing our parents, we can bring our young adult children or middle-aged adult children with us.
Exactly. So we live in a very age segregated culture, and not every generation, not every age feels comfortable in every environment. So, what are some subtle signals that that give a message to people of different ages that they don't belong in this place?
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you're asking me about community in general. So I'll
Yeah.
talk about that first. I am interested to also share a little bit about spaces where intergenerational programming is often desired and facilitated. So if we think about the places that we live, that we go to for services, for recreation, for entertainment from day to day, there are signs that we can have that indicate who should be in there. And it covers, we're here to talk about age, but it sends messages about what gender or sex, what socioeconomic background is welcome, what physical abilities you should or can't have if you want to access this space. And there are messages as well about age. It might relate to resources that would accommodate a wheelchair or a baby stroller or a walker for somebody who could have and be eligible for accommodation and space at any age, but is more likely to apply to an older adult. We could have features that are not in line with the normative age-related change in vision or in hearing that older adults might experience, or that exclude populations that don't speak English entirely. We might also see signs on the wall, things like at a senior housing community that say nobody under 18 after 5 o'clock, and that want to make sure that there are no young people living in the apartments. We see a lot of these messages around in everyday space. And there are efforts, age-friendly is one of them, to try and bring more universal and accessible design so that people of all ages and abilities can access a space. I also see features when I look at things like a senior center, like a recreation and parks program, like a school that can make intergenerational opportunity more or less appealing. You can imagine at one of the first centers where I got started doing some research was a child care center right next to an adult day program out in California. And we went into the classrooms. And of course, there's only teeny tiny little chairs and mats to sit on the ground. So they helped me to learn that we keep these adult-sized chairs just outside the room so that when our neighbors come to visit, we get them in place before they arrive so that there's a place for them to sit. We check the floor to make sure that toys are not a trip or a fall hazard for them.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. Sometimes you might bring children, let's say grade school, into a craft room or space, and there is so much to look at that you cannot get the young person's attention. That can be distracting for adults who've got some cognitive impairments as well. So paying attention to what's going to be distracting to people can also be important.
Ideally, if you were to design and work with an architect to design a space that would be welcoming intergenerationally, what would you say to the architect needs to be included?
I would say to start planning with the licensing and regulation folks of whatever populations are going to be using it from the beginning. That is another one of those siloed aspects that we face. For example, I gave those examples of adult day programs and child care centers. They have different licensing and regulation bodies in most states. That's my experience.
I had never thought of that before. And
Wow.
Wow.
And so there are different food handling safety guidelines for kids than for adults in some communities. Different requirements with regards to bathrooms or fire extinguishers or fire safety, all those kinds of things. And some are more and some are less willing to learn from the people who are designing that intergenerational space. So that's one thing. One thing that a next principle I would probably say is to consider both the physical environment and the social environment. So the physical environment, universal design features are really good. Lines of view and hearing and access are important. There are adults and children who can exchange with each other or gain enjoyment just from seeing each other, even when they aren't able to be together, or there's a need to make sure that children don't, walk away from the space where they're being supervised, for example. Another piece of that social environment is to give people choice, to have that opportunity for an adult to not join intergenerational interaction if they don't want to, or if a child is in a space where they are experiencing overstimulation, a place where they can be safe, supervised if they're a young child, and not be left to deal with more stimulation than they can manage. And to have that furniture built into place as well.
Mhm.
With regards to the social environment, it could include things like having a wheelchair accessible path that runs around and through a playground space for children. It might be having sturdy benches with arms that make it easier for adults to get up and down and go outside and watch the children. It might be about designing garden space that has a gate on the child side or youth side and the adult side so that both can access it, and that accommodations are made to give people of different ages and abilities a chance to access those same resources. I had some colleagues at UT San Antonio and at Illinois State University that are doing some really interesting work in that area. And my colleague Matt Kaplan talks about intergenerational contact zones, which brings into play some of the things I've been talking about.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the playground in our neighborhood, and it has that recycled tire
Fire and rubber?
surface on it, which is great. But I don't think a wheelchair. Well, first of all, there's a curb to get up to that, and I don't think an individual in a wheelchair would able to very easily make it across that. I hadn't thought about those barriers, and talking about the benches. We discovered this a while ago in churches. Pews don't have arms, and they're not conducive. And that you can pull on the pew in front of you, but
that's the one in front.
That's a completely different motion that I'm not used to, as opposed to putting your hands on the arms and pushing up. And when we had that conversation in the church where I was a member, it kind of light bulbs went on for people. Oh,
I don't know what you did about that. I want to offer an example too, that even when you're dealing with people that are pretty much fully grown and have got almost all their physical faculties, they need cues also to encourage interaction. So, for example, the Bridge to Health program that I'm directing, we've got teenagers, 14 to 19-year-olds, and community adults, 50 and older. And what did they do when you'd bring them into the space, right? Because they all sit in the same size chairs. They can all use the same tables. They divided by age group. And so we found that we needed to provide them with some cues to remind them, or to take the burden off of them to feel like they had to cluster with their age peers. Placemat for a teen mentor, placemat for an adult mentor. It's just something that we can observe and pay attention to that can facilitate that interaction until it starts to come more naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that particular congregation, getting back to,
Please.
Completely surprised everyone. They took a vote. Okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to keep these pews that were built in the 1880s, and our bodies in the 21st century are different than bodies were in the 1880s? Do we take some of them out and put in some chairs, or do we take them all out? the vote was to take them all out. And so that congregation now has chairs. Some of them have arms, some of them don't, for people who want to spread out a little bit. And
Mhm.
it's much more conducive. So if somebody has a wheelchair, it's easy to move away one chair, and the wheelchair can just be anywhere in the room that person wants to sit. So yeah, I was really surprised and pleased that they kind of came to that collective decision, because pews can be sacred.
Yeah. Very cool solution.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Thinking about work environments, when you have 3 or 4 generations working side by side, what opportunities does that present that we might not think of?
I think it takes some intentional awareness to take advantage of those opportunities. And again, we come back to this idea of ageism, and a reminder for your audience that ageism goes both ways.
Yeah.
We most typically think about it associated with stereotypes about older people, but we have stereotypes about younger people that also represent ageism. And so we can hear about this and we can see it play out, whether it's in firsthand experience or a meme on your social media about the stuff that old people just can't do at work, or the stuff that young people just can't do at work. And it's important to recognize that age doesn't necessarily convey experience in the job or with the company. We see that more older adults are having to or want to work for longer periods of time. They're able to, or they need the financial resources and other benefits. And so you could have 60 and 70-year-olds in a workplace who are brand new to the organization.
Yeah.
And you could have a 30-year-old who's been there for 5 or 10 years. So it's important to try and remember that age is not the same as tenure at an organization. And then to recognize and to be able to talk about the strengths that having an age diverse team can bring. For example, we learned that people have different strengths, not just stereotypical strengths, like the young people can solve all your technology problems and the old people can help you with handwritten items and things that require a lot of interpersonal skills. I'm stereotyping just by saying that. I guess that was my intention. But to intentionally build some age diverse teams and think about the talent, the level of experience, and what people can learn from each other. It comes up a lot here in the state of Ohio, really across the country. There's a lot of attention being paid to people being job ready, having the skills that they need to get into the workplace and succeed. And of course, they're not all technical skills. They are those interpersonal skills. They are those skills for life, like showing up on time. And older people don't have the corner on all of those skills. So we learn together. There's in the research, I see that most of the data are interested in what are the differences and what are the similarities between employees of different ages. And in my mind, that kind of reinforces some of these stereotype ideas. There are a few, but not very many studies in which organizations or researchers are trying to intentionally bring different age groups together to optimize quality of work and satisfaction at work, as well as team effectiveness and productivity. So I expect we're going to see more of that coming out in the near future.
I think the topic of ageism is a really good topic to have intergenerationally, because we experience it differently when we're younger and when we're older, but there are similarities in those experiences as well.
Yeah, for sure. It can be common when I don't know if their managers or somebody else is trying to explain about differences in age groups at work. It tends to lump people together. This is what it's like to work with someone in the baby boom generation. This is what it's like to work with somebody who's a Gen Xer or a millennial or et cetera. And anybody in those groups could say, don't paint me with just one broad brush. There's a lot of variability among people in my age group. And in that way, getting people together of different ages to talk about ageism can be effective. and give that chance to blow up some of those myths.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be
Well,
important as well, and this applies to a lot of intentional intergenerational programming, tapping into what you said just a minute ago, to recognize and invite people to examine their ideas about people of different ages. It could be that they have limited or no experience recently with somebody of really different age. Or it might be that their experiences have been negative, sometimes really traumatically so, and that they need a chance to share and to challenge the idea that not all people of one age group are the same. So that's something I like to do with just about any group of young and older people. And if there are staff facilitators or family members involved in bringing the ages together, I like to do it with them too.
yeah.
And to explore, what do I think? What do I believe? And how accurate are those ideas?
The topic of intergenerational is just close to my heart, and I am, and it comes from my own family experiences as well, beginning as a young child. And I am so excited that this is the key topic of our 2026 symposium. And just a little plug here for everyone. We are so pleased that you'll be with us and providing the keynote address and helping to set the stage for the day. Do you want to just give a little preview? I know that there are 4 strategies that are key that come from your observation and your work about what those are.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I find it's a timely topic, and I hope that your usual abundant aging colleagues and attendees are beating a path to sign up for your event in 2026. One thing I would hope for people to take away is, while I illustrate with examples that might lean more towards one age group or setting than another, is that I think about intergenerational as a strategy, not just a program. And I'm pretty good at helping people to think about what's your need in your community? What's a resource that you want to utilize? I got an intergenerational approach that you could apply to that. And I edit a journal of intergenerational relationships. And so I get papers all the time that are of new and innovative approaches to bringing young and older people together, utilize them as a talent, as a resource, and respond to some new opportunity or need that's arisen in their community. So that's one thing.
Can I just pause here for a second? You don't just edit a journal. How many journals are there dedicated to intergenerational?
There is one that is that is mine, and then there's one that's about kinship care family. So that is also intergenerational.
Okay,
Thank you for lifting it up, Beth. Another thing that I would hope people would take away is that how you bring young and older people together is more important than what it is that they're doing. Now, of course, you might have specific goals that lend themselves to specific programming content, but for me, it's all about the relationship. The relationship is the means by which we achieve our goals of intergenerational programming. So I'll share with folks what I mean by building a relationship. It doesn't mean just putting them in the same room with a placemat that says teen mentor, adult mentor. There's more to it than that. And we all have experience building relationships. So if we tap into those things we use to make friendships and build trusting relationships, we can bring that to our intergenerational work too. Another point that I will offer is about the resources that are available, whether the people coming to your sessions or watching it online are involved with an intergenerational program or they're thinking about getting one started. They don't have to invent the wheel themselves. One of the things we see comes out over and over again from practitioners, from researchers, from the data. I already hinted at it. prepare your partners. That means the family members, if family members are connected to your young and older people. The young and older people themselves need a chance to get prepared for what to expect and check in on what they're going to be doing. And very importantly, any staff need a chance to be prepared for that programming as well, right? We hire as camp counselors people who are good working with kids. We hire as senior center recreational therapy directors, people who have training working with older adults. It's not so common in our world to find people trained in both. And there are resources available for people to think about and shape how they train and prepare their folks. Same thing goes with regards to demonstrating your program has an impact. I hear people frequently tell me, and this is from intergenerational programs that have served hundreds of kids and older people for 20 or 30 years. I know my program is having an impact, but we're not sure how to demonstrate that. There are tools that are out there so that practitioners can find somebody with expertise, or they can find tools that work for them without having a PhD in research to know how their program is impacting their goals and the people who are involved. And that's increasingly important for groups that are dependent upon other sources of funding to get these new programs rolling. So I'll share some of those tools, both for staff development, for programming content, and for demonstrating impact as well.
And I can't wait for the details for those as well.
Oh, and I told you that we have an intergenerational curriculum that we just got feedback on. So it's hopeful that in October we will be able to share a link to it. That's our intergenerational mentoring program that we developed through the Bridge to Health program I was just telling you about with our teen and adult community mentors.
Excellent, excellent. So what's one mindset shift that you would love for listeners to take away from this conversation?
I think that leads in really well to an idea that I've espoused for a long time, but that really represents a shift. That intergenerational is not what you do, it's how you support your mission. Now, that doesn't apply to all groups, but for people that are talking about getting invested in an intergenerational strategy, it's that idea. This is how we support our mission. It's not just something that's listed out on the activities calendar or that we put a line on the budget for materials and snacks. This is how we support the health and well-being of our older adult clients. This is how we bring recreation and opportunities to our community members and families. This is how we support thriving and positive youth development for the young people and families that we serve.
And that this is how we address ageism. This is how we change the age-segregated mindset of the culture.
Nicely put.
Yeah.
Sounds like that would resonate with you.
Absolutely. I, a couple of years ago realized, okay, I tell people all the time, it's important for us to have intergenerational relationships. And I'm at a point where we don't have grandchildren. We're relatively newer to the community, so we don't have younger friends that have young children. And I realized, golly, I really should practice what I preach. And so at the church that I attend, they said they needed some more adults to work with the youth group. And I thought, well, if I'm not in charge and I could just show up, that would be a good way for me to be developing relationships with junior high and senior high kids. And that was my reason for doing it. What I did not anticipate is, so yes, I'm developing relationships and I'm, with folks who are much younger than I am and a different generation. But of the other adult advisors, there's a 40-year age gap. in the adult advisors. The oldest adult advisors in her 80s, and I just didn't even expect that how intergenerational this volunteer opportunity would be. And
I
it's
love that example.
yeah, it's really been a joy for me. So
My mom just turned 80 and she still works full time as a realtor. And she's able to articulate that one of the reasons she really loves it is that chance to work with and mentor and learn from other agents who are quite different in age and stage of their careers.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Well, as we come to the end of our conversation here, you've been warned. There are three questions that we ask all of our guests. And so it's time for me to ask you, when you think about your own aging, what has changed about you and what do you like about your older self?
I think I like the perspective that I have. And I have to say, though, there's a project I'm working on that is still kind of giving me knots that I associate more with being a new professional, a new parent as well. I have more confidence and more gravitas as well coming into a space, Beth. And I think I'm also able to be, yes, sorry, this is turning into a long answer. Able to recognize that with the level of experience and gravitas, if you will, that I have, is also a lot of opportunity to be humble and to be open to continuing to learn. I think I felt more pressure as a younger professional to know the answers right off of the bat to prove that I could do it. And it's a lot easier to say, I'm not I'm not sure I did that right. Let's see how it worked out and if I can do it better next time.
Great, great. Next question. What surprises you about what you're doing right now at your age?
I'll share a positive and a not so positive. And the not so positive is that um, limitations in the intergenerational research space have not changed a whole lot. And part of that is because we are not an experimental type of program or area of research. We work in the community with real people who want to and can benefit from intergenerational ties. And that means that you continue to face some of the same challenges of a small sample size, a limited amount of time that you can typically follow people and bother them for answers to survey questions and the like. So there's still a lot of room for improvement. I think that on the plus side, I would not have pictured myself creating a Center for Intergenerational Research and Practice that is designed to help fill that gap by creating a hub. Because there are other people like me out there in the world, and they're often kind of isolated at different universities or programs. And so, sure, that Center for Intergenerational Research and Practice is designed to be a place where people can come together, be a resource to each other, and both contribute to research, to practice, and learn from practice and research.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. And finally, excuse me, is there someone you've met or someone who set an example that inspires you to age abundantly?
Well, I do. I think somebody that I lost a couple of years ago. My mom is a pretty good example, but this person that I'm thinking of made good time for work, was an honored mentor to help people get started in their careers, and also really knew how to go out and have a good time and to teach other people to do that as well. I see myself continuing to be engaged in this field for a long time, and I don't want it to dominate my life. However, I want to have a good time with my friends and family and help them to have a good time too.
Nice, nice. Well, thank you so much for your time, Shannon, and for sharing with us today. If anyone wants to be in touch, where can they find you or how can they be in touch with you?
I am all over the place. I am on the College of Social Work website at osu.edu. I mentioned the Center for Intergenerational Research and Practice. That is a College of Social Work center. And so it's got a web page also available through csw.osu.edu. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can learn more about the work I do with the Journal at Journal of Intergenerational Relationships. That's a Taylor and Francis publication. I'd be glad to hear from you.
Great. Great. Yeah. And if they can't find you in any of those places, they're not looking. Well, thank you. And thank you to our listeners for your time with this episode of The Art of Aging, part of United Church Home's Abundant Aging series. If you would like to participate in additional conversations around aging abundantly, visit us at abundantaging.org. I invite you, if it's not yet October 2026, to join us for our upcoming symposium. That registration will be opening in August, and it will be a hybrid event. You can come join us in person on the north side of Columbus, or you can join us online. But in the meantime, may you look around you and identify a person who is aging ahead of you, who influences your understanding of how you can age abundantly by their aging example. Until next time, thank you.